Hey guys, what is going on? Welcome to The Camera Adds 10 Pounds. I'm your host, Peter Sirs. You're welcome. And today I don't want to, all my guests are special, but today I have a very, very special guest. My guest has been in the entertainment industry for 20 plus years as a singer, as a writer, as a host, as a producer, like so many things. She does it all. And more importantly, she has a podcast that she started that's very popular now. A new podcast that she started that's also really popular. Super funny, but also I don't know why I said super funny because I'm used to having comedians. She's not funny at all. I mean, you might be funny, but like whatever. That's me being like
Let's
an
see if
MC
I'm
right
funny.
there.
We'll
The next
see if
comic's
I'm
really
funny.
really funny. And also the second most famous person that went to my high school.
You're the first.
I'm the third.
Oh,
Anthony Munoz would probably be the first most famous.
yeah,
He's
I
in
guess
the
so.
Hall of Fame.
Right.
NFL.
We should give him
Uh,
his props.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Anyway, you guys, put your hands together out in Radioland and everywhere for my very special guest, Christina T. Lopez, you guys.
I feel like I can hear the claps now. Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
they're clapping. You know what's funny?
They're not, but I'm here for it.
There's a lot of people that have probably never listened to my podcast. They're like, who's clapping? I do it all the time. But how are you?
I'm good. I'm actually really excited to be on the podcast here with you. I feel like, we have interviews all the time. You
For
have
sure.
interviews all the time.
Uh-huh.
I have interviews all the time. But to actually be here with you, we
Stop
came
it.
from the same place. We're like just
We did.
I feel more connected,
we
and
have
I'm
we have
happy to be
so
here.
much to share with like my listeners because we did grow up in the same place. We grew up in Ontario, California.
Yes, we did. IE
909.
909.
Whoa! And Paul grew up in Pomona too.
Did you?
Yeah.
Got it.
Oh God. I mean, like, okay. So if you're one of my listeners and my followers, you may not know you probably know who T is, but like I said, we went to high
Maybe
school
not, maybe
together.
not.
But you're 2 years younger than me. You graduated.
99.
Yeah. 2 years younger
We
than
just
me.
had our 20-year reunion.
Did you
What?
go?
I did go.
I did not.
Okay,
I was like, no way.
so that was my initial reaction.
Uh-huh.
When I heard they were putting something together, I was like, that's not something
No,
that we do.
Not anymore.
Okay, so, and then what happened was I talked to a couple of friends of mine who really did want to go, and I was just like, guys, I mean, okay, I feel like now with social media, I
Right.
actually keep in contact with the people that I want to keep in contact with.
Of course.
I went, and I don't even know how I came to the decision. Mainly because a couple friends of mine wanted to go.
Who wanted to go? I need names.
Oh,
Rosario.
Rosario.
Of course. I
who's-
knew it. I
Who's,
knew it.
Who I've been. She's like been my homie ride or die since we were 11.
Yeah.
And
Since
Delphina.
11?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, Rosario.
Hi,
What's her last name
Rosario.
now? It's-
Barroso.
It is Barroso,
Because
that's
she
right.
married
Yeah,
Tony.
okay, that's right,
Because
yeah,
he was
yeah.
also from our school.
Uh-huh.
But and then Delphina, who last name used to be Hernandez.
I'm sure I would know her face if I saw it.
Yes, you would. And so I kind of decided to like go with them.
Uh-huh.
But let me tell you, when I got there, it was almost like, I feel like a 10-year reunion. This was different. This was a 20-year. I
Yeah.
feel like a 10-year reunion is all about you show up and you're like, here's what I've been doing in the last 10 years. Who's higher up than who got married, who didn't, who had a kid, who didn't. And the 20-year was not that at all. I feel like we're all past that stage in life,
Uh-huh.
and most of us have kids at this point. And so it was more like,
Like on
oh
purpose?
my God, on purpose. Well, no, mine were not on purpose, but I'm happy to have them.
Yeah. You're all about the mom
And
life,
I'm
yo.
all about the mom life, yo. So when I got, it was just a really interesting thing because when I got there, the vibe just completely surprised me, and it disarmed. Everyone was disarmed by how much love was in the room because we just looked at each other like, oh my God, we're alive. We made it.
Yeah.
Because where we came from, there was a lot of things going on.
Yes.
So we were happy to just see who's alive, who's
Yeah.
doing well, and it just opened up our. I sound so corny right now. It opened up our hearts to be like, oh my gosh, I love you. I actually love you just as a friend. And I never told you that. It
Right.
was the craziest thing. And we left that day, and it wasn't it was beautifully done, but it wasn't in a ballroom or anything. It
Yeah,
was
yeah.
just, not the whole class didn't come. But it was surprising who actually did
Uh-huh.
show up, who made the time to come. And we were just
Where'd you
all
guys have
really
yours at?
happy for each other. It was on Euclid. I forget
Oh,
the name of the place,
North
but it was like
Euclid
a
or South
banquet.
Euclid?
I want to say it was near Holt.
Oh, that's down there.
Yeah.
That's
Listen,
that's
I'm
in
from.
s-
I'm
south side.
originally from the south
I
side.
know, dude. I know. We could talk about that. Because I got people, like I said, the thing is like I have people that listen or that follow me that know me as like an entertainer,
Yeah.
but not like as where I came from.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure like I grew up, I saw some shit, and you grew up, and
What do
I'm
you
sure
think is what do you think is the one thing people would be the most surprised to know about you and your and your past and the way you grew up? Because people see you on stage, you're
yeah.
killing it at the comedy clubs. You're here, you have your own podcast. I think people have an idea about you that either you just knew to work hard or you had a leg up of some kind, and I feel like they would be surprised at certain things.
Yeah, I think when I tell people like where because because you grew up there, so you get it. I grew up I grew up in Northside, Ontario, like
Oh,
on
Calaveras.
Calaveras. Yeah, I grew up on like that's where I lived in Calaveras. Yeah,
Wow.
so that
We
was like
would
the
have been enemies.
I mean, yeah, like, but the thing was, is like all the dudes from the neighborhood knew that I played baseball and stuff. So like they were all, and I played with like a lot of them, as we were
Mhm.
growing up. So like I knew them, we knew each other as just like people, as opposed to and they knew I wasn't gonna join the gang and whatever. But they also knew that there were some dudes that lived maybe in Southside, for example, that would still probably want to fight or shank or whatever because of just where I lived and
Right.
because I was like
Yeah, simply your address.
yeah, like if you're not in the gang, but you're friends with the guys in the gang, and this other guy doesn't like him, it's like, well, we still want to fight because you're friends with Pee Wee or whatever. You know,
Right.
it's like, I mean, you just live down the street from me. What do you want me to do?
Right.
But I think some people don't. I think people don't realize that gang stuff and stuff like that, like how, especially like how it was like when we grew up, because it's not really like there are no cool rap songs about Ontario
Right.
or like you know what I mean. Everything's like about Compton and Watts, and you hear like even East LA when it's in the media and whatnot. It's like that's what they think of when they think, but they don't think there's like a lot of other places like Pomona, like Paul, where Paul's from, in Ontario, where like that's a predominantly Latino populations and.
And I think that's the difference. I think when it comes to places like Compton, Inglewood, it was made known in raps. They're different cultures,
Yeah.
In Compton and Inglewood, it was predominantly African American
Right.
community. Where we grew up, it was a Mexican community, and I mean, like not just the street gangs, but Mexican mafia territory.
Yeah.
And which,
What was it? Black Angels?
well,
Am I wait or
Say-
like no? What's the other one?
yeah,
La
that's
Jeme?
where my
Yeah.
parents. That's where my parents were
Yeah.
in, and so and then that had ties. I mean, they were running things from not just our city, but in that
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
area, and then from prison, and then that would all of that. And I think that just hasn't been made known in raps. Number one, because
Yeah.
maybe there wasn't a Mexican gang member that made it in the rap gang.
Like I'm trying to think like maybe Kid Frost for like a second.
Yeah, yeah,
And like
yeah.
lighter shade of brown,
Yeah.
maybe.
But
Remember them?
also, I don't know what the code is. Like, I don't know how different the code is there because we
Yeah.
didn't. You don't tell about what happens.
No, for sure. I know.
in
I
the
mean, that's the thing.
public.
So like when I tell people that they're like, you didn't grow up in the hood. I'm like, no, I did. Like there were like drive-bys and people getting jumped. Like I remember you went to Vina Danks.
I did.
So I went to Imperial, which is now Ray Wiltsey or whatever. But like I remember like guys from the high school or even guys that were like kicked out of the high school would come to the junior high to fight like junior high kids. And like I was never worried, but like if you see someone like getting jumped, right, you're not going to stick around and be like, well, let me see if they're just not going to hit me because like you don't know. Like we
Yeah.
would run home sometimes because like dudes were getting beat up, and it's like I don't think people realize that. Because I mean, I talk about I don't know what you know, but like my dad was like like my dad was like abusive and stuff. Like growing up, he wasn't even Mexican, but he thought he was because he grew up in East LA. So like everyone thought he was Mexican. My dad's actually not Mexican at
What
all.
was his cultural background?
He's Creole.
I didn't realize that.
But he grew up in El Sereno, East LA, so like he grew up around
He was honorary-
Mexicans. Well,
honorary
yeah. So when he
Mexican.
got locked, when he got locked up, I was like, my dad went to prison, and I was like, who do you hang out with? He's like, I hang out with, the Sureños, and I'm like, but you're not Mexican. like how does that work, dude?
I mean, he was accepted.
Yeah, he was,
Yes.
but it was like. it was just weird because like people did think that my dad was Mexican, and I'm like, no, because he, like, he has like he cut out his mustache, like, I mean,
Yeah.
and but he was not Mexican at all, and so like that's always funny
You know
because
what's funny? Sometimes I will hear, um, like I'm thinking of a friend of mine right now in particular, like white boys with Chicano accents
oh
because they grew up
yeah, yeah,
here.
yeah, like
And I'm like,
Miklo.
I don't know why I love that, but I love that. No, and they're not trying to be gangsters. Like some
Right.
of them are surfers,
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
you'll hear the Chicano accent come
That's
out
funny.
sometimes. I love it.
I used to get people that told me that I didn't talk like I was Mexican, and I'm like, I don't even know what that means.
Right. What does that
Like,
mean?
because I don't say like, "What's up, Simon?" I say
So
like, I don't
big.
know.
That happened to me at an audition once.
All the
I
time.
got really mad.
Yeah.
My agent sent me out on an audition. I can't even remember if it was a TV show or a movie. I want to say it was a TV show, and my agent told me, they want you to be able to speak English and Spanish. I'm like, cool, but the script, the sides were in English, so
Uh-huh.
I rehearsed with my coach, whatever. I go in, and the producer starts. We're acting out the scene, and then she's like, "I'm sorry,
I already know where this is going
I
because this has
know
happened to
it's
me
so
so many
awkward.
times.
So you know that the part you've got to be fluent in Spanish, right?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "I am." And she goes, "Oh, I thought," and I said, "You thought I would have an accent if I?"
Yeah.
And she goes, "Yeah, well," and I said, "No, here's the thing. It didn't call for an accent.
Right. Yeah.
So if you want to be specific." But I left. I was fuming. I was
How
so
long? Now, how
mad.
long ago is this? I feel like this is probably
Years, like
10 years ago.
less than 10 years, but
Okay.
around that time.
Okay.
And I remember I left, I I j- I told her, I was like, "So, okay, if you want me to prepare it with an accent, I
Yeah.
can do that. Like I'm a professional. I just need some time to do that. So
Right.
I'll come back." And I called my agent and I was like, "Can you believe?" Because he was Latino as well,
Uh,
and he it didn't phase him at all. He was just like, "Listen, just go back in and do it." And I was just like, "I'm so mad. I'm so mad."
huh.
I did prepare and go back in and do it, but I was so over it that I was just like, "I don't even want this part. I'm just doing this because my agent worked hard to get me in here."
Right.
And
That's I feel like 'cause I figured it was like a while ago because I feel like now, luckily, finally, we're moving into a time where you can be, a Latino, Hispanic,
yeah,
whatever, on a show or on a movie, and you don't have to like it just like you don't have to be like the token person. Like you can be a Latino that happens to just speak normal English.
yeah,
Like, but back, a few years ago, it was always like, do you speak Spanish? Can you do an accent? Can you make it a little more Mexican? You're like, "Oh,
that's
no,
wrong. Well,
I can't."
and for me, I bleach my hair. Because I do music as well,
Yeah,
and on stage, I just like my hair to be blonde. I like it. I like the way it looks.
yeah,
My skin is lighter
right,
than
yeah,
I
yeah,
would say the average Latino color skin, and I've
yeah.
always been
I got you a
jealous
little
of
bit. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
like
got you a little bit.
all of my sisters. I have 5 sisters. We're all
5?
yes,
Oh my
or sorry,
God.
no, we are 5,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have 4
Uh-huh.
sisters. We're all different colors,
Yeah, yeah.
our skin colors, and so I was always like jealous of my sisters who could tan very easily, and they'd get this beautiful tan, and I would just like burn red, or I'd be white. My
Uh-huh.
skin is like really light. And so, of course, that was another thing where I would go in and they wanted me to, I don't know, look more Latina. And I mean, on one hand, I'm like, I understand what you're trying to do with the part, and I get it, but on the other hand, like
Yeah.
I'm offended. On the third hand, that I don't even have, I don't even know what to do about it
Yeah, yeah.
because I know what you're going for, and I don't look like that because I know what you are going for. At one point, I dyed my hair dark just to be like, well, maybe if I went back to my hair in the natch,
Yeah.
then
In the
I would get
natch.
more
Oh.
parts, like in the natural
I got it.
shades.
That's just never been that phrase has never been used on this podcast.
In the natch, hashtag it.
Yeah.
Um,
Started.
I thought maybe I'd get more parts,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I didn't get more parts. I just got different parts.
Right. That's
It
fair.
always was just like we still don't know what you are, what
Right.
you are, or what you look like. So, instead of like exotic girl who airs on the white side, you'll be exotic girl who airs on the more ethnic side. Now
Right.
that you have dark, I got more Asian parts. It was so
Oh,
random,
that is weird.
so weird.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I've gone on some like usually like now it's like what do they call it? Ethnically ambiguous. You're just
Right.
like, all right, dude, whatever. Just give me a part. I don't
Right.
care. Like I don't care.
which
Um,
which title pays? I'll take that one.
I want to actually because I've always found this story fascinating. So like we said, you've been in the, like entertainment and media for like 20 years. Um, I want you to tell everybody the story about how you quote unquote got discovered
Yes.
because it's I mean it's fascinating and like it's like fate like whatever you want to call it like that's fate. I know the story, but I feel like people that are listening don't know the story. So.
Yes. Um,
So you worked at the Mills Mall. I
I
remember this.
did.
Where did you work at the Mills Mall?
I
Because I
had
worked there
two
too.
jobs
Oh,
simultaneously because
uh-huh.
it was like graduation year, and I needed to pay for cap and gown. Like
High school.
yes,
Oh
high school.
shit.
I needed to pay for cap and gown. I needed to pay for like the graduation trip, all of that. So I
Right.
had two. I went to school and I had two jobs, and the two jobs. One was at Star Shots. I took pictures
Like
of
is that like
people.
glamour shots kind of, but like
Yeah, but like the 1 hour photo type
uh-huh.
vibes.
Okay.
And so I took pictures of people, and then
So you had two jobs in high school
yes,
already
senior
hustling.
senior year,
Uh-huh.
and then I had Baker Shoes, which at the time was called Leeds Shoes.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
So yeah, I would go to school, and so every day it would switch off. So Monday I worked at Baker's, Tuesday I worked at Star Shots, Wednesday, and then on Saturdays I worked both,
Oh
like
wow.
back to back,
Uh-huh.
and then Sundays we didn't work because we would go to church.
Right.
So I was I was working at the mall. This was last 1999. I was working at the mall, and I have to say this though, because the prelude is that I had gone through a lot in high school, and I don't know if I mean we didn't really talk that much during this time, but I was pregnant when I was a freshman, and I had twin boys, and they passed away.
Oh,
One
yeah,
passed
that's
away when
cool.
he was a month old, and one passed away when he was a day old. And aside from that, I was into a lot of stuff at the time because um, I felt like I was supposed to do something with my life,
Uh-huh.
but I also that was overwhelming for me, and it was a lot of pressure. So I ended up trying to like take that pressure off of me and get into other things, if
Uh-huh.
that makes any sense to anyone. Um, I don't think that I mean, I didn't get pregnant on purpose, but I feel now looking back as an adult, I feel like I probably let it happen because I just wanted to be in my mind. I felt this sense of like, I'm supposed to do something,
Uh-huh.
but it's too much pressure and I just want to be quote unquote normal. Like, let me just be normal. It's almost like I was asking God, like, I just want to be normal. Like, let me just,
Yeah.
do what everybody else does here, have kids early, work at the
Everyone does
grocery
that. Yeah,
store.
for sure.
And I just wanted the pressure taken off. So I feel like, like I said, I don't think that I forced it to happen, but I think I did let it
Yeah.
happen. So that for me was one of the hardest times in my life, obviously.
So you
And
were like 14?
I was 14. And so I had them. I had these two little boys, and then when they were infants, they passed away at different times for different reasons. But all of this, I just had felt like I had lived already so many lives,
Yeah.
and I knew that I loved music. I knew that I wanted to sing, and I knew that because my counselor would bring me in and go, well, so how you have to put what are you going to be in the
Yeah, yeah.
yearbook,
Right.
and I had to choose, and I was like, I don't love anything other than singing at the
Yeah.
time. And your counselors are supposed to, they're not supposed to, but at that time they were like, what's the real
Yeah,
job
for
though?
sure. Like, what are you going to go to college and waste $100,000 of tuition to study for 4 years?
Right.
Like that kind
Right.
of thing.
That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so I was forced to choose something, but it went against everything in every fiber of my being. I was like, I'll be a lawyer because you want me to say something that is acceptable to you. So I wrote lawyer.
You lied.
So it still says that in my yearbook that I wanted to be a lawyer. Never had any intention of doing that. But what it did make me realize was that, like, writing that down, putting that down, it did make me realize that it did go against every fiber of my being, which meant that to me, I only really wanted to do music. But at the same time, I had no idea how I was going to do that. I
Right.
didn't know anybody, like we talked about before.
Yeah.
We lived in Ontario. There wasn't,
I had no, yeah, me neither. I had no idea how to get into like I also knew that I wanted to like get into the business, but like you're not around it like when you
Right.
live here. Like you're around, everybody knows something.
You don't even
But
see
around
the
here,
way. You
yeah,
don't even see the path to get to the people. You have no idea what the
and it's not
first
even
thing
that
to
far from
do.
here. It's like 40 miles or 45 miles.
And my mom would bring me here because
Uh-huh.
my mom knew that I really loved it and that I wanted to be in this industry. So she would bring me here. At one time, we even took a tour of Paramount Studios, and she was just like, "You're going to be back here one day," which is a cool story because a few years later, I was filming my own show on
Yeah.
Stage 22, which is awesome. But during that time, that last year of high school, I just remember feeling like, okay, I know specifically now what I want to do, and it has nothing to do with anything people are trying to force
Right.
me to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
So there was a bit of surrender that I had to do because I was tired, I was exhausted. Prior to even going through that situation where I lost children and all of that happened so young. Even before that, growing up, like you said, the way that we did, my parents are ministers now, but before that, they were drug dealers and they were gang members. And so I lived through that. I'm the oldest.
Yeah.
So there were drive-bys at my house, and sometimes my parents were the ones,
Getting
who
shot
were
at, or
doing it.
yeah,
And like same thing, I would visit my dad when he was locked up. I would visit my grandma when she was locked up, and then sometimes they were locked up at the same time. That's
Oh,
a
wow.
lot for kids to go through.
Yeah.
At the time, it seemed normal.
It's also, yeah, I was just gonna say it's not normal at all.
It's
But
not
like,
normal at all,
yeah.
but you don't realize how tired you are. So by senior year of high school, after all of that had happened, I was exhausted, and I just felt like there was some kind of surrender that needed to happen. And so I remember it was just like me and my conversation with God, and I in my like prayer, but which really was only happening in my mind. I was just like, okay, I give up. Like I'll do what you want me to do. You know what I want. You put this passion in me for music. I have no way to get there. So I will just surrender to you so that you can help me figure it out, because I obviously can't figure it out. No joke, within a couple of months, I was working I was still working at the mall.
Yeah.
Um a producer who was driving his big SUV and a brake light was out on his SUV. He stopped in my dad's auto body shop, which is in Corona in the IE. And he gave my dad his card and was like, "Call me when the car is done." And my dad saw his card and was like, "Oh, you're in the music business. My daughter sings," and blah blah blah. And he showed him a picture, but the only picture that was on his desk was our family
Right.
picture. And the guy was like, "Oh, have her give me a call." So my dad came home that day, and I had gotten home from work, and my dad was like, "I met this guy. I told him you sing." I was so embarrassed. I was
Right.
like, "Dad, why
I
would
mean,
you
of
do
course.
that?"
Yeah.
Also, if this guy's anybody, why is he
Why is he in Corona?
Corona?
Yeah. Corona is, I mean, it's fine, but it's not like,
I just thought
who lives in Corona
everything.
but Travis Barker? I think that's like the only person. And I
I
don't even
just
know if he lives there still.
right. I just thought anything that ever happened
Yeah.
on Hollywood Boulevard.
For
That
sure.
just was my mindset
Yeah.
at that time. And so he was like, "Well, he said to call him, so you should call him." And I was just like, "Oh!" So I did call him,
Right.
and he talked to me for a minute, and he was like, "So your dad tells me you sing," and I'm just like, "Yes." I was so embarrassed, and he was like, "So can you just sing something for me?" And I was like,
On the phone.
"Excuse me and excuse you." Like, that's not how it happens.
Right.
In my mind, I was like, "No, I got to go to an audition at the studio." And I was like, sure. I went into the bathroom because better acoustics.
Everyone knows that. You sound better in the shower.
Yes. I went into the bathroom, and the only song that I could think of was Amazing Grace. And so I sang it a cappella, because there was also no music to go along with it. And I was just like, I sang the song, and he was like, "Great, I'll let you know if I hear anything." And that was the end of the conversation, which made me even more mad, because I'm like,
Right. Gee,
this
thanks.
dude says this to
Weirdo.
people
Right.
all the time. Also, again, who even is he?
This is before internet, and you could just like Google somebody.
Yes.
Like now you'd be like, "Oh shit, this is so and so."
Yeah.
But back then,
No,
yeah.
just a card.
Yeah.
You could have made this
Yeah.
at home. And so about a month later, this was like in December, he I think he had lost my number or something, but in the time from which he had talked to me, in between, he had gone to a Christmas party and met these girls who were in a singing group who were looking for a fourth member. And he was just like, "Oh, I talked to a girl on the phone the other day." Just like the most random.
Yeah.
So he calls me back, And my dad calls me at work, and my dad is like, "So this guy drove back here because he lost your number. So he told, here you go, call him." And I talked to him, and he goes, "Yeah, so I met these girls. They're looking for a fourth member. Here's their number. Give them a call." And that was it. And so I called them, and they were like, "Yeah, can you meet us tomorrow?" And I was at Star Shots, and I was a shift leader, so I had to like open and close. And I looked at the thing, and I was like, "I absolutely cannot." But something told me to go, "Yes, I can."
Yeah.
And so I said that I would. I don't know how I got my shifts covered, but I did. And then I came out. I met them in some random little office, and they asked me some questions about myself. They asked me to sing. I sang for them. And then they were a harmony group, kind of like Boys to Men, like a four-part harmony.
Yeah.
So they said, and I was like, "I've never really done that before." And they were just like, "Can you just, how about you sing? And then we'll all come in." This is like it was like a
Yeah,
movie.
yeah.
It was
No,
just
I
like,
know.
this is what happens
That's why
in a
I'm like,
movie.
I'm like, I remember the story, but it's like, if you saw it on TV, you'd be like, this never happened. But like, it happened.
It actually happened. So I started singing, and then the three of them came in with all their different harmonies, and I didn't know how to act
Right.
because I had never experienced that in person before. I had seen Boyz II Men do it on TV, but I didn't know that you could actually do that in person. And I didn't know that I could do that. But here we were, and our voices are blending, and it scared me because I was just like, "Oh my God, like what's happening?" But it felt really nice. And they were three Latina girls, and they were really nice, which was also weird. Because I was like, how are four girls just
Yeah.
getting along
Like,
right
how are we
now?
not fighting right now?
Yes,
Nobody has 3 dots on their hand. What's going on?
I did at the time.
Wait, did you really?
Yes, I've since lasered them off because I did them myself in class one time
course.
with like a needle and Indian
Oh my
ink.
God, are you serious?
Yes, didn't you
Oh.
do that?
No, I didn't because I wasn't like mi vida loca. Like I grew up in the hood, but like I was trying to get out. My whole life, like my last comedy album called Man of the Hood. Like I tried to get out of the hood as soon as I could.
You did it.
I know.
And now you're paving the way for others. So yeah, that happened. I left, and I was like, okay, so that was an audition. That's what I was expecting an audition to be. I had a pager at the time.
Of course.
So before I got back to Ontario, I had a page from them. So I pulled over, payphone. Oh
Did
my
you know it
God,
was them, or
payphones.
did you just get a random number?
No, I knew it was them because I only had 909 people in my life at
Oh,
the
yeah,
time,
yeah.
and this was
Oh,
like
God,
a
that's right.
310 number.
Yeah.
And so I hit them back, and they were like, "So we really liked you. We saw the other girls. We really liked you. We would like for you to come back and meet our manager." And I was like, "You have a manager?" Okay.
Yeah.
So I came back within the next couple of days and met their manager, and we walked into this office, and it was a different office than I met them in. And so it was a really beautiful, like, you know. And so their manager was Suzanne DePass, and I didn't know who that was. But we walked in, and Suzanne DePass's secretary was there. And so right before we walked in, the girls in the group tell me, "So you know who Suzanne is, right?" And I was like, "No." They were like, "Have you ever seen the Jackson 5 movie?" And I love the Jackson 5 movie.
Yeah.
I was like, "Yes, of
That was
course."
actually really
Watched
good.
it 25,000 times. And they were like, "You know Vanessa Williams?" And I said, "Yeah." And she goes, "She plays the part of Suzanne." And I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
The woman who found the Jacksons, the woman who I of course she's told me this right before we go in to see her, and now I'm so nervous. And her secretary was like, she was like, "How old are you?" And I was 18 at the time. I was like 18. She's like, "Girl, I have a wrinkle on my butt older than you." She was like, "You'll be fine. She's fine." So we walked in and we sang for her together, and she was like, "Cool, done. Like, I love her. I love you. And I love you guys together." Because they already had this, they were already a group.
Did they already have a deal at that point?
I didn't know that they did. But
Okay.
then the
Yeah,
next
yeah.
sentence out of Suzanne's mouth was, "So tomorrow we'll go and present her to the record label." And I was like, "Wait, you guys have a record label?"
Yeah.
And they were signed to DreamWorks Records.
That's right.
So
Yeah,
we went into DreamWorks Records. And what I didn't know at the time was that the reason they were looking for a fourth member was because their fourth member boned out. Like, she left the
Wow.
group. And so they didn't want to lose their deal, so they just quickly needed to find somebody so that they could go back in and go, "Hey, lost a member, but don't worry, we have a
Yeah.
new one." So I didn't know any of that. That would have been so much pressure for me.
Yeah,
Thank
yeah.
God I didn't. But we went in, and they were like, "Cool." the fact that we had our manager behind us, Suzanne, was she was such a powerhouse. I learned so much from her, just her being around me in that beginning stage of my career, just knowing that she was a woman, she could go in and she could handle it and get it done and say, so this is what's happening now in a room full of men.
Right.
And it would just happen. So that I had never sung in a real studio in my life. I had never been on an airplane in my life.
Oh,
I had never
yeah.
done any of that. And by the next month, that's what I was doing. I was recording an album. I was on an airplane. We went to Miami. We recorded more songs. And then I was on a world tour.
Yeah, you guys were opening for like Enrique and
Yes.
whatchamacallit, Mark
And Mark Anthony.
Mark Anthony,
And the radio
you guys are on
tours.
TRL, and like it's crazy within like so fast.
It was so fast.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking, I couldn't have done that. Like, this was, like you said, whether you call it fate, for me, it was, okay, this was me and God aligning. This was me aligning to God's plan because I could not have done this.
Right.
This was not within my resources. And yeah, it went from there. And then like a year and a half later, I was at a Christmas party with the girls. And the man who originally called me to set me up with these girls, I never met him in person.
Oh, no kidding.
So we just talked on the phone those 2 times, and he never asked for anything. He was never like, "Go join this group, and if they accept you, then I get 20%." He never did any of that.
Right.
He just introduced. So his name is Nick Martinez. So I go to this Christmas party, and he introduces himself to me because we're in this group of a bunch of producers, and I'm like, "Wait, Nick Martinez." I was like, "Oh my God, like you changed my life." I was like, I had never met him in person.
Oh, wow.
I was like, since that phone call, it was just the one phone call. It was 5 minutes on the phone with
Right.
you.
Yeah.
And I've been on tour. I've recorded an album. I've been on television. Like, I had so much had happened because of his one phone call. And we had never met up until that
That's
point.
crazy.
And he was just like, "That's amazing. I'm so happy for you." Amazing dude.
And that's it.
Since then, I've worked with him several times because of that, because of the way that it started and because of how honorable he was in the beginning.
That's such a
That's
cool
the
story.
story.
That shit happens, man. But I think also like, like I've talked about it a little bit on this podcast, but like, you speak things into existence.
Yeah.
But I feel like there are some people that just speak things, but they don't like surrender themselves or put it out there. Like they don't really do anything. Like you were still doing stuff. And so it wasn't like, I know you were like involved, like you were saying, in your church choir and stuff. And like,
I wasn't ever in the choir. So I'm also...
Were you sang all the time?
No, I didn't.
Oh.
I did by myself. I was a hardcore introvert. Like even in high school, I only ever really hung out with my boyfriend. Like I was never the girl who was always at other girls' houses and like hanging out. That wasn't me. It sounds ridiculous because I'm an introvert, yet I'm in this job that I get on
I'm
stage
super
for.
introverted too.
Are you?
So I mean, it's gotten worse as I think stand-ups. Paul does stand-up too. I think there's something about like when you're on, and then versus being off. And like I know when I'm off stage, like I mean, like I know you, and like if I know people, it's fine. But like I can't just be like super outgoing, like, "Hey, how's it going? I'm your best friend now." Like I can't do that.
I can't do that.
Yeah.
And someone said this the other day that I heard them speaking. Oh gosh, I can't even remember who it was, but they said the difference between an introvert and an extrovert is an introvert is just the way that they refuel. So an introvert, if they're on an airplane, like if they're an airplane, they refuel when they land before they get back up. An extrovert can refuel on the way. Like they get their energy from the party that they're in, from all the people and all of that. And introverts can sustain that amount of energy, but when they land, that's when they actually refuel, if that makes sense.
It makes
Does that
zero
make
sense, but like it's fine. I was following along, and I'm like, yeah, when we take off
Are
and
we
we land,
airplanes?
no idea what you're talking
Okay.
about, but okay.
So anyway, I'm an introvert that has
Yeah.
had to learn how to be an extrovert for my job.
Right.
But I did not sing in the church choir. I sang at church once, and I was just like, I'll never do that again.
Oh, okay.
I couldn't do it. I sang at school once, and after that, when I got the record deal, I remember people being like, "You sing?
Yeah.
Like, since when?" That was another reason why I didn't think it was going to happen for me, because I was like, I'm not the person that goes out and tells people
Right.
that I'm a singer.
Like a theater person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yes, exactly what you said. I think when you speak things into existence and there's an element of surrender, what is meant for you will not pass you by.
Yeah.
It will happen no matter if you're not the person who thinks that they can do it, but
Yeah.
you really have a passion for it and you've seen it in your mind. That's a big thing for me. If I can see it, so for me, whether you call that a vision or whether you've had a dream about it or whether you just know, sometimes there's just a knowing that you have inside of you. If you can see it, you can then birth it from the spiritual realm into the natural realm. But you got to see it first. And if you see it, it's already happened, if that makes sense. It's already happened. I believe God, exists outside of time. God created time. So if you can see it, it's because he's showing you something that's already happened. He's outside of time looking in. So when I can see it, then I can speak it into the natural realm, and then it births it from one realm into the other, and then things just start happening. So it's, for me, when I'm speaking things, it's not out of this like, oh, I hope it happens. Like, I've seen it. And so I'm just going to speak it because that's my responsibility for it actually to happen in this realm.
I get it.
Am I getting weird on you?
No, I get it, dude. You're like, I mean, like I read and like I do, and it's just like all that stuff makes sense. But I think like some people, they just don't get that part. It's like, oh, I'm just gonna work this job that I absolutely hate because it's what I'm supposed to do. And it's like, I mean, is it though? Like, is it really what you're supposed to do? Like, I know it is, and
It's
you
tough
get
maybe you're raised that way.
I mean,
I know.
where we come from. Like, it's just, but I've always been like, no, like that's not like I've never had a real job like ever, and just being in the business, like, and then I don't know, but I believe it's not weird for me because I believe all that stuff. Like, I believe in just like manifesting, but like I also, like I said, believe that. Like, you can manifest stuff all you want, but you still have to, like, apply it yourself.
Yes, for sure.
A lot of people at home just manifesting. It's like, well, no one's going to do anything for you if you're just sitting on the couch watching Netflix.
Right.
Like,
I think you've got to step into it. I think you speak it and you know that that's what you want. And then your work after that is just preparing for it. Maybe it hasn't happened yet. Maybe that person hasn't called you yet. Maybe, I mean, for me, it was like that phone call. Maybe that hadn't happened yet at the moment when I was just like, I see it. I know what I want. I'm just going to like surrender and say, God, you have to take over now. So I spoke it, but the phone call didn't happen at that moment.
Right.
But my job was to prepare. So I started doing vocal warm-ups and getting myself in shape because at that time I was not in shape. I had maybe gone through some depression that I didn't realize I had gone through it during that time.
Yeah.
So I had just really let myself go in the sense that I didn't care as much. So I wanted to care. I wanted to care about my well-being and my health. So I was preparing. I was preparing for that moment of opportunity. I didn't know when it was going to come, but when it came, I was ready, I think. And I can look back. I think at that moment in time, though, I just thought, oh, that was luck or that was blessing. That was amazing. But I really was preparing, and that's our work.
But the thing is also, like, so that happened and whatever, and then since then, you haven't stopped.
I haven't
like,
stopped.
There's a lot of people that like have that thing, and then it's just like, okay, well, but like since then you've carved so many different paths for yourself, and like I talk about, the hustle and whatnot. But I mean, you've gone into, doing acting stuff, creating these 2 shows that you've done, producing stuff, still singing, like still like you do like a million things. And I know you like to stay busy. I know that. But now you're a mom too, which is also like part of like what you've built now. And so it's just like there's just so many things like between then and now. But like, what was your goal? Like, you started you guys were pop stars, and then obviously like you guys kind of all went your separate ways. But you're like, okay, well, I'm still in this. Like, I'm not. What happened?
The group for me, when I first started, I started in the singing group. We did a TV show. We did all these amazing things. We went on tour, and then when that group ended, I didn't know what to think or how to act or what to do necessarily. I just knew that it had to be something new and it had to be something on my own, and that terrified me because when I started in the group, at least there were 3 other people to like blame failures on. You know what I mean? When you're in a group, if something doesn't work, if you write a song and it doesn't work, at least it's not all your fault. But then when you have the freedom to actually put your unique stamp on something and it's just you, then it's all you. So if it doesn't work, it was just because of you.
Right.
And that is a lot of pressure.
Basically my life right now. basically.
But we were all based here in Los Angeles, and so the only thing I knew how to do, part of it was escapism, and part of it was me just needing to carve my own path. I left. I went to Miami,
Uh-huh.
and I lived there for a few months.
Oh, really?
And a producer friend of mine was like, we can record, we can write songs. That made me feel good because I thought, oh, okay, you know, someone does see musical value in me outside of the group
Right.
because you know, I'd never been on my own as an individual solo singer or person in the music business. And so I just clung to that for the time being during that time when I was trying to figure myself out. And it was great for me because Los Angeles at the beginning, when I first moved here, there's a lot of, if you don't really know who you are when you come here, it's really tough.
Yeah.
And even though I did have a good sense of who I was, it was really tough. So for the first 5 years of living here, I absolutely hated it. I hated it. I
Yeah.
knew that I had to be here. I
Right.
lived here. I never went back home. But I hated it because it's just a big force. It's like it's a big ocean and you're one little person and the waves keep crashing on you. So if you don't know what your job is, what your role is, what you're actually trying to do here, you will just keep getting knocked over.
Yeah.
So I had to figure out like, okay, here's the big ocean. Am I a deep sea diver? Am I a surfer? I had to figure out what I was. And it helped me to do that in another place and not still be stuck here because you will get knocked around here. And so I went to Miami. I lived there for a few months. I started recording. I started writing. And it worked. I got a deal with Cash Money Records, and
Cash money.
Cash Money, and that also made me feel.
Wait, who's Cash Money? Like.
Cash Money was at the time was Lil Wayne, Birdman.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, Manny Fresh.
Yeah.
And they were looking for more mainstream pop acts, and so they really liked my music. That was also very validating because I was like, okay, there's a future for me after all. The crazy thing is I never thought about actually doing something else, which is insane. If you like, I was unemployed at that time. I wasn't making any money. I was not in the group anymore. There's no job to be had. I still paid hardcore rent here in Hollywood. Like the rents are high, the parking tickets are high.
Stupid.
And for whatever reason, I was just like, you know, I think when you have that passion, you make a decision. No, I'm just gonna do it. You just keep going. And so that's what I did. I got that record deal. I started, you know, we had our whole experience there with Cash Money, and I love those dudes. The business part of it for me didn't necessarily work out with them because we worked in different ways, and a lot of what I do in the Latin community just for them wasn't there at that time. They didn't really know how to market that. And that's fine. Not everybody does, but the actual people there were just amazing. From them, from Lil Wayne especially, the way that he worked. I would watch him work in the studio, and it was so inspiring to see because.
Did you ever drink purple drink with him?
I did not.
Curious.
I did not. I was always surrounded, after the girl group, I was always surrounded by a lot of dudes. It was me and a bunch of dudes. It was like me and the Cash Money guys.
Right.
Or, you know, I went on tour with A.B. Quintanilla and it was me and a bunch of dudes. And so I was always really, I knew that I had to keep my wits about me. And so I wouldn't get involved in stuff like that because I was just like, nope, it's just me out here. So I just needed to stay protected. That was my way of doing that. But it was so inspiring because in the media you would see him. They play hard,
Of course.
right? Like
They-
diamonds, yachts.
They would walk around with the chalice or what was it, like the big old the thing, like they had jewels on their what's it, chalice, right?
Yeah.
And they would just that was
Diamonds,
their thing. Yeah.
jewels, money,
Yeah.
everywhere. Chicks, you know, like all of that. So you get a certain idea about them, but when I would watch Wayne work in the studio, like he went to work. Work. And so I was like, oh, okay. So, you know, there was a sense of like there's always something deeper for the ones that last longer. So that was inspiring to me. So I feel like that part served its purpose. But then in the meantime, in order to make money, I would still go back into the acting, and I started TV hosting, which I did not want to do. Now I love it.
But you're so good at it.
Now I love it.
I know.
I didn't know that I was going to be good at it.
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
actually offended that they asked me to come and
Really?
audition to be a host. Because at the time, my mindset was like, no, I'm the recording artist. I'm like the talent. So don't ask me to be
Right.
the one interviewing the talent. And I was offended. So stupid. But I went in, and the funny thing is me in my rebellion of like thinking I'm not. They think they're trying to make me all hosty, and I pictured like Ron Burgundy, and I was like, I'm not going to be hosty. I'm just going to be myself.
Yeah.
They're going to have to suck it. And I went in, and it worked. I was myself, and I wasn't trying to have a host voice or whatever I thought
Right.
was a host was supposed to be, and it worked. And then when I realized that that's what it was, and that I could do that,
Yeah.
it made me relax more within myself. And then when the musicians came on, when the actors came on, I knew their side of it.
Right.
So I would ask questions that I was actually really curious about, and deeper questions, because I knew what it was like to be in the studio. I knew what it was like to be on tour. Um, and then I just became really genuinely curious in people's lives, and because I loved the way that it would spark hope in other people. And so that was always my goal, is
Mhm.
to, like, if when I was 15, 16, 17, 18, and I was at home,
Yeah.
what would really touch me, and it's like straight to the heart,
Mhm.
and where's that story in this person? And that would happen whether it was like I interviewed politicians, I interviewed, all kinds of different people,
Yeah.
musicians, and I ended up starting to really love it.
Uh-huh.
And then I started producing, and it's been interesting because I took all these turns in my career thinking like, well, I guess I got to do this since the music isn't working, but they ended up being things that I really loved. And now in this 20 years,
It's crazy.
it's crazy.
No.
Now at 20 years, I feel like it finally happened this year, in my 20th year, when I can look back and in hindsight go, every single one of those things was for a purpose and for a reason, because now I can do all of that for my own projects. Like, I'm able to produce because sometimes I'd be on a really low budget set and not everyone would know what they were doing, and I had to learn how to do more than one person's job,
Right.
and I was so annoyed with it at the time. But that's the reason that I can actually do it now, and why I get paid more,
Yeah.
because I can take on multiple roles. At the time I didn't know that. I didn't realize that, but now looking back, I'm like, oh my God, this was all of this was training for what I do now. And like you said, there are many different,
You
like
do so many things.
I do, and that part used to stress me out.
Uh-huh.
For one, because I felt like I was spread too thin. I felt like, should I be doing all of them at the same time? Like, if I'm focused on music, does that mean I'm letting go of the host stuff? Should I go back to my hosting agent? It used to spread me really thin, and then I used to also feel a type of way when people would say that I was like a jack of all trades, but I really loved everything that I did, and I would work hard at everything that I did, because the saying is jack of all trades, master of none, which made me feel a type of way. Like, well,
Right.
I mean, I would hope that I'm good at these things that I love to do. So I had to figure out what was the one thing that people were actually getting from me and from my work in any category. And I think the main thing that I got from whether it's me telling my story, or whether it's me interviewing someone else where they're telling their story, or me writing a song or anything, I think that people get hope. Like, they get little sparks of hope inside of them to be able to do what they want to do. Even when you and I are talking right now about where we came from,
Yeah.
there's somebody, when I was younger, we grew up there. And so when somebody would talk about that, I'd be like, yeah, but that's not for us. We live over here. Like,
Yeah.
you don't know what we have to deal with. But when someone said to me, oh, no, I grew up down the street, it made me feel like, oh my God, maybe I can do it too. And so when I really focused on what it was that people were getting from, I emphasized it.
Uh-huh.
So now what I know that I do, and what my mission is, and what my purpose is in any field, is to ignite hope in other people. And so I consider it now like I don't have a bunch of different jobs. I actually do one thing. I have one job. I just do it across different platforms.
Uh-huh.
And for me, that de-stresses my brain.
Right.
It makes me have a sense of sanity. And it also makes it really easy for me to say no to the things that are going to distract from that, which I didn't always know how to do. I felt like I had to be at every party, because one person might be there. And it was exhausting. And so now for me, if I get an opportunity, and it might even be money that I need at the time, but if if I feel like it doesn't align with that mission, I can easily say no to it. And something always pops up after that. That's
Right.
the better thing. And it keeps me from spinning around. It keeps me from moving left to right. It keeps me kind of like straight moving forward, which makes me get to the goal faster always because I'm not looking around for other things and
Uh-huh.
collecting up other things and then having to weed through it. So that's what I do. I ignite hope. I just do it in different things, as
Right.
singing,
Because you do
hosting.
like speaking and like women's empowerment and stuff like that,
I
which
do. I like how you like pumped up your
I talk in my
chest when you
hands
said
all the
that.
time. But
Women's empowerment.
yeah, I mean, it's
I love that.
important. It's important.
Yes.
I try to just tell people that one, they need to take. I mean, one of the themes on this podcast is just emphasizing people to take care of themselves
Yes.
because, as you know, like as a comic specifically, it's very easy to not take care of ourselves because
Right.
we drive a lot, we fly a lot. You know, we're
Also, your
and
late night gigs.
yeah, late
In
night
the
gigs.
bar.
You're in the bar. There's bad food. There's bad drinks. There's drugs. And so my thing was like, if I can not succumb to those things, like you can too, you know. And then you're, you know, doing all these things. You're hosting, but you're also mom,
Yeah.
wife. So like, those are also jobs that, you know, require enormous amounts of time. I don't have either one of those things, husbands or
You're
children.
not a wife or a
No.
mom.
But like, even still, like, and you still manage to do all those things, and then, you know, I know your show, both of the shows were about like how you're still doing those things, but you're also a mom, and
Yeah.
that's important because I think a lot of people feel that they can't, you know, and it's easy for me to say because I don't have kids, and I'm like, you still got to do things that you're like, you still got to focus on you, and you know, be career driven. But when you're a mom or a dad, for that matter, it's easy to be like, okay, well, I just got to take care of my kids.
Right.
But you're doing like both things,
Yeah.
you know, working, building your empire, but also still being a mom and a wife.
Yeah. That was scary for me.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was terrifying. When I found out that I was pregnant with my first daughter, first of all, it was still in the time when people were like, you don't have kids in this business. Like that's gonna slow you all the way down. Like, are you ready to settle down? Is that your plan?
Yeah.
Before that, it was unheard of at a certain point where, you know, if you, especially for a woman, because you're the one that has to get pregnant and you're the one who has to
that how
actually
it
give
works?
birth. Maybe not anymore. So
Yeah.
I'm
I
hearing.
don't even know.
But neither one of my my babies were both blessings and surprises.
Yep.
And I remember when I got pregnant with my daughter, I had just signed a big contract with McDonald's to be, which I'm like, oh my gosh, I love, like, it's the brand, it's McDonald's. It's like what we all grew up with. It's one of the biggest
Yeah.
brands in America. It's a family brand. It's a household name. It's all these things. I had just signed a contract to be the face of their in-store channel. So
Oh wow.
the
Yeah,
Mick
yeah.
Cafe,
Yeah,
they wanted to make McDonald's, and the Mick Cafe be like a place where you would actually go and get on the internet and hang out. And
The
they had all
Mick
these
Cafe.
televisions where they were producing original content, or they wanted to
Wait, are you
produce original
serious?
content. Yes.
Are you
Yes.
really?
And so they signed me on to be not just the face where I was saying like welcome to everyone and tossing to other videos of other people, but I also was creating original content
Oh wow.
for the channel. And so of course, what did I do? I brought in musicians and I interviewed like all these cool things for you to watch while you're sitting with your family at McDonald's. And so we had already started and I had just signed, like literally the ink was drying, and I found out that I was pregnant. And my husband at the time was in Singapore. And so I was like, oh my God. I hit him up and I was like, can you Skype right now? It was not FaceTime at the time. It was Skype.
Right.
Can you Skype? And so we Skyped and I told him that I was pregnant. It was a complete shock to me. It was a complete shock. We had been together like 7 years, and it was just, I was shocked. And so I called him, and he immediately started laughing, and I immediately started crying because we had decided, it took a long time for us to decide, but we had decided that we weren't going to have kids.
Oh wow.
Because we loved our careers, we loved the way that our lives were going, we loved to travel, we loved all those things, we just were comfortable. So we decided not to have kids. Literally, it took us so long. Literally the month before, November, we decided that. And in December, I found out I was pregnant.
Sweet.
And I I was crying and I was just like, I just don't want everything to stop. I feel like everything's going to stop. And he made me feel better about it cuz he was like, you're just assuming that. You don't know that,
Right.
you know. Long story short, I ended up hiding it for my own self-conscious reasons, even though I don't think that anyone would have, you know, thought anything
Yeah,
bad about it
we
at that
live.
time.
I mean, at that point, so you got pregnant at 34,
30,
or
32, 30, 30. Wait, what year was it? It was 2012. So I would have been
so
31.
okay.
I was 31 when I got pregnant with my first
So
daughter.
at that point, especially for where we come from, there's some people that are almost grandparents.
Yes. Yeah.
Like for
Oh,
real.
I went to the 20-year reunion. There
Yeah.
were grandparents there.
Yeah, which is crazy to me.
Yeah.
That people that like same thing. Like I'm like, wait, how? I'm just doing the math. I'm like, oh, you had kids way early, but now your kids are having kids way early, and it's just like, man.
Yeah. Now, thankfully, I'm not a grandparent
Yeah.
yet. My kids are still pretty little. But I just remember thinking, I was still self conscious about it because at the time I was judgy. And whenever I heard of a girl getting pregnant who was in my industry, I was like, another one bites dust.
Uh,
Cool. More opportunities for me. I mean, that was wrong of me, but that's how I thought. So I figured that's how everyone else thought. So I basically hid it for the longest time. Like as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I took a bunch of pictures that I just knew I was going to be able to like use for social
oh,
media
right,
throughout
right.
the 9 months.
Shut up.
This was
What's
my
that called?
first pregnancy. And then when my daughter popped out and I actually, for the first time had a picture with my daughter, people were like, whose baby is that? Um, but the interesting thing was I still was like writing songs during the time. I still was shooting for McDonald's and my sister's my stylist. So we would just hide it for as long as we could. And it was fine. And later on I did find out that like the time was changing. People were not as judgmental about it for women in this industry. Also, moms were like becoming a thing. Like now it was cool to be a mom, which that's not the reason I got pregnant, but it was a cool perk.
Uh-huh.
And then we were like, okay, that's it. That's all we can handle. Because right now we can still tour, and we're like the cute family that has the baby. We can't have children. Like that's not a thing. Let's not do that. But surprise, surprise, we went to Coachella, and then
Like
we
on
found
per-
out we were pregnant
were
again.
were you guys performing there, or you guys just went?
We were performing.
Okay. Yeah.
I think my husband was performing, and yeah. So her middle name is Ella. Long story short, because that happened at Coachella, and then after
Hilarious.
that, we she was born, and I was just like, wow, two, like that's crazy. I feel like with every child that came, it was a whole other thing that I was like, well, now how are we gonna do it?
Right.
And somehow we just did. And so because of, you know, because I had been hosting for a certain amount of years, because I had been producing, because of all these things, because I've been on air, because everything, I had to figure out a way to melt these parts of my life together because they were very compartmentalized, and it was exhausting me to be like rock star over here but mom over here. And you know, can I not post a picture of me and my kids because I don't want people who are hiring me for gigs look on my page and see mommy and me happening? You know, it was exhausting.
Yeah.
And so I had to find a way to mesh that together and make it a thing when it wasn't really a thing. And so I started a radio show and we went live with it. It was live radio. It was called Mom Life Yo. I got another mom who I loved, and she thought it was a good idea. My husband thought it was a good idea, which anytime he thinks it's a good idea, because he's always I just find his ideas and strategies to be so great and so well thought out that usually if I present an idea, he always is like, okay, sure, but how about X, Y, and Z? And did you think about blah, 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 blah? And at this point, he didn't. He was just like, I think it's great. I think you should do it. And I was like, what?
Oh
It's a
yeah.
good idea. So we did it, and we had different moms on every week. It was live. I mean, there were CEO moms, there were stay-at-home moms, there were moms who had dealt with postpartum depression, there were moms who were trying to just balance it all, didn't know how, and it was great for it was great for me, first of all, to have that mom sitting in front of me pouring their heart out, because I was like, okay, now I don't feel crazy, because sometimes I feel like I don't want to be just a mom, but I feel like I can't say that out loud. But you just said it. So okay, that makes me feel better. All these things that we're always thinking in our
Yeah.
heads. And so it was great. It was an amazing experience. And so Now, I mean, I feel like there were more mom type brands that have
Of
sprung
course,
up
for sure.
everywhere, and it made it okay. Not that it wasn't okay. It made it okay in the eyes of society and the eyes of this business for women to be moms and still work at what they love to do.
Right.
It's not easy to try to balance it. That every time I think like the scary part is over, something else comes up.
Of
Like when my
course.
daughter started real school, like it wasn't preschool and daycare anymore, where I could technically pick her up latest 6 p.m. if I needed to.
Uh-huh.
Now, when it was real school, you can't be late. Like you can't be late dropping her off, and you can't be late picking her up.
Right.
And we had to quit jobs in order to be there in time just to drop her off and pick her up. Like my husband was doing a morning show, and he quit that particular job just to be able to take her to school. And like for me, I have to be done with not just all my work, but anything else I have to do in life. Like, do I have a doctor's appointment? Do I have a do I need to go grocery shopping? I have to be done with all of that within like a 3 hour time frame every day.
Right.
Um, and it's scary at first because as an entrepreneur, as a person in the entertainment business, you're used to being able to work 24 hours a day, and you have to set limits and set boundaries when you have a family. Um, and at first it's scary, but then you really start seeing the benefits of it, not just for your kids, but also for yourself. When you give yourself a break to rest at certain times of the day.
Right.
We decided this year that on Sundays we would not work, that we would make it a family day. Do you know how terrifying that is for a hustler to be
Yeah.
like, on one day, I'm just not going to work. No matter what comes in, no matter what offer comes in, we say no. That's terrifying.
Yeah, that's weird.
But we started, that's weird. But we started doing that, and our kids feel so valued. Like they're little, but you still see it in them.
Right.
And then it also, when we're there with the kids, it gives us a sense to like celebrate the things that actually did happen that week, because we don't, you're not used to doing that when you're just on the go, 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 go all the time. Everything's almost left open-ended. So you don't, even though you are accomplishing so much all the time, you don't actually feel like you're ever finished. So you don't feel like you've accomplished anything really. Because you feel like you've never hit your goal. But I feel like when we take the one day, or even if it's not a whole day, when you take the time to just be like, nope, we're stopping right now, it does make you reflect, and it almost like puts a flag in the week.
Right.
Like we did some stuff today,
Yeah.
and now we're in a moment of rest where we can actually look back at it, and it makes us feel like we are moving forward. Because otherwise, when you're in hustle mode, you never think you're getting anywhere, even though you really are.
Yeah.
You know?
It's always one of those like you know, like for me or for anybody, like you look and see people like where you want to end up, like it's like the ladder. What's it, like a ladder thing? It's like where you see people that are above you on the ladder, and you're trying to get up to them. Meantime, there's people below you on the ladder that are like they're trying to get to where you are.
Yeah.
And so it's like a constant thing. For everyone listening that doesn't have children, can you just tell them that it's okay that we're selfish and career driven, and that it's not like it's not. People always want to pressure me into having kids, and I'm like, I will
Oh
when I
gosh.
need to. It's like
Listen.
it's work, man.
Before we had these babies, I feel like I have to say this out loud. Before we had these babies that I love, 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 love. I had decided that we would not, and I was happy with my decision. I, I feel like there are some people who say that they're not going to try right now, or they don't need to try right now, or they don't want to try right now, and maybe there is something in their heart that they actually do, but they're settling. Sure, there are those people, but there are people who actually are like, no, I actually really love my life, and I love what I do, and I love the freedom to be able to do it.
That's me.
And I had made that when I meant it when I
Yeah.
made that decision.
When I'm ready, I'm ready. But
Yeah.
I'm just not ready yet. That's
Yes.
all. And it's not weird for me.
And it's
So-
okay to be selfish for I set boundaries even now, even though I have kids. Like when it comes to other things that I'm just like, I have babies and work, like work and babies. So if in this time, like in this hustle month right now, I am closing it off to let's just hang out. Sorry. That might seem selfish of me, but I'm selfish on behalf of my family because I know what they need, and I'm selfish on behalf of my work because I know how much work it takes to get something done. I don't have time to just hang out and chat on the phone with you right now for an hour.
Right.
I'm selfish when it comes to those things, and I just have
I
to
don't
set
even
the
like
boundaries.
talking on the phone to anybody.
Right? Like we text.
So weird. Yeah.
That's the thing.
All right. Let me do this because we got to get out of here. What do you have coming up that's like where people can check you out? I know, like, I actually know this because my buddy Eric is also a part of this. You're doing the Hispanicized thing
Yes.
next week, which this will air next week. So that'll be that.
It'll be on the weekend.
yeah,
Hispanicized,
that won't
which is a 2 or 3 day event
Yeah.
where there's lots of breakout sessions. There's great networking opportunities. A great way to see Latinos elevated, you know, to hear what your culture is doing and to just be inspired. I went last year. I was also, you know, there posting about it during that time. So I was excited to come back this year. And this year I'm speaking on one of the panels for Baby Dove. And other than that, there are speaking opportunities that always are coming up. You can look for my music, all of that on officialtlopez.com or my Instagram. Everything is, all the handles are at officialtlopez. My podcast is called Mama Morsels. It's a new podcast, and they're really short episodes.
Super
like
short, like
5
6,
minutes,
10 minutes.
10 minutes, yeah, very short episodes. And they're lessons that I've learned. I apply them to motherhood, but they're lessons that I've actually learned in this career.
Right.
Like in my life, in my childhood, from my own parents. So there are a lot of non-parents who listen in, which I'm really happy about. And it's becoming a book, so I'm excited.
Oh, you're writing a book?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yes.
About, like, mom.
So that one is already, it's just being tweaked for the written word, but it's basically the podcast in book form.
Oh, cool.
And then the other one is a different one. It's about thriving. I can't say the title yet, but it's about thriving, and it will also be a short.
I'm tired of people coming on my show having stuff to plug, but not being able to plug what it's called yet. But it's fine. Eric did that too. Like, I had Eric. So Eric Rivera, you guys. I don't know if you guys run into each other, but he's performed or he's speaking at some point.
Yeah.
In the Hispanicized thing, but he was on like a day before they announced his HBO special. So like he was able to tell me off air, but not on air. And I'm like, but it's fine. It's the business, man. You gotta do NDAs, and sometimes you just can't share it yet.
Right,
so
exactly.
All right, dude. I'm so glad you came.
Thank you for having me on.
You have to come back.
I will come back anytime.
Ladies and gentlemen, follow her. Like I said, official T Lopez, right?
Yes.
Everywhere on social media. If you like the podcast, rate it, review it, all that good stuff. If you're listening to this, I'm going to be at Pachanga Casino this weekend, October 17th through 20th, 6 shows. And then I'm actually headlining Bonkers in Vegas, October 24th. And that's the next couple weeks for me. Thank you so much, like I said, for coming in. And thank you guys for listening. And this has been The Camera Adds 10 Pounds. Have a good day, guys. Bye. Thank you.